Monday, March 16, 2015, at 7 p.m. on the second floor of the Town Hall in the Great Hall, 499 Plymouth Street, Halifax, Mass. For the following, as stated in the application, quote, "The applicant, Bowker LLC, is seeking a comprehensive permit from the Town of Halifax zoning board of appeals under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, Section 20 to 23, to construct 52 single-family homes, 39 market rate, 13 affordable, on a parcel of land containing 62 acres between 229 and 243 Franklin Street, Halifax, Mass. The project will be accessed by main access road with sidewalks, public water, private subsurface sewage disposal system, and stormwater management facilities complying with the current state stormwater management regulations. The project will contain a mixture of three and four bedroom homes, 13 of which will be deeded restricted in accordance with the requirements of Mass Housing, which is the subsidizing agency on this project. Bowker LLC will become a limited dividend organization as per the requirements of state law and regulations. Project is to be named Black Ledge Farm on land located off Franklin Street, Halifax, Mass. Said property is owned by Springer Construction Incorporated, as shown in Assessors Map 82, Lot 1, and Conoco Engineering, as shown in Assessors Map 93, Lot 9A, Petition 826.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to, first we had a little meeting in the other room just to do some clerical stuff, some administrative stuff, but the whole presentation will be shown tonight. So I'm going to turn this over now to Attorney Galvin.
Yes.
And he will make his presentation. Any questions, come through me. Come to the mic, state your name and address, and then we'll go from there. Please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Attorney Robert Galvin. I'm a lawyer from Marshfield, Massachusetts. My office is located in Duxbury at 10 Enterprise Street. I've been doing this type of land use work for the last 23 years. In addition to being counsel for people that do development, residential, and commercial, I'm also a town council. I'm town council in the towns of Marshfield, Norwell, and land use council in Rockland. I also have a few separate jobs as special counsel. So projects like this are near and dear to my heart because I've tried 6 of them at the Housing Appeals Committee, a couple of which have gone on to appellate level at the Superior Court, which reviews those decisions. I wanted to just introduce the rest of my development team. To my right is Rick Springer. Rick is the president of the Springer Construction Company, and he is a principal in this development company that's offering this project to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And behind me, just to my right with the white shirt, is David Harrington. David is a professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts working for Conoco. Mr. Lincoln could not be here tonight, but he'll probably be here at the next hearing that we have. I do have a couple of pieces of information that I'd like to hand over to the board, get out of my hands so that I can give you a little bit clearer explanation of everything else. What I have here is some larger full-size plans of the site layout, in case anybody wanted to have something that was a little closer in front of them. So I'll hand you those. Might be easier when you're looking at things, and there'll probably be some extras anyways. If the public would like any copies, we have multiple copies of the reduced size, and we'd be happy to get that out as well. And as you can see, if you've looked at the plans at all, there are some wetland areas on the property. And I have a copy of the current order of resource area delineation for the 5 house lots that are in the front, closest to Franklin Street. And I also have the order of resource area delineation for the wetlands in the rear portion of the property and an extension. So I'll leave those maybe for Ms. Wong Ryan, and she could hand those out so that they're together. Or I can hand them right through you. Thank you. So the first packet that's put together is for the 5 lots closest to Franklin Street. And the second has to do with the wetlands delineation in the rear and an extension because the time frame was running out and we had it extended. And all that really does is confirm that the wetlands that are on the property are properly delineated according to the Halifax Conservation Commission. So just a few other things I'd tell you. We filed this application on February 10th, but we agreed to stamp it in on February 17th because the board was going to be able to conduct the hearing tonight, so the board has complied with the law, and we're completely happy with the start of the hearing tonight. So what I'd like to do is go through our application tonight, walk you through the project, maybe talk about some future scheduling, and invite the board to engage in a site walk when it's weather appropriate. Also let you know that we'd be absolutely happy to participate with you or council in any type of a work session that might be necessitated. They are permissible, they are customary in this type of a project. It's not for the purposes of depriving the public of any right to participate in that portion of the process, but there's many things that go on during a process like this with some negotiation that you would report back during a meeting on. Nothing actually gets decided, but it's a working session, so we're happy to do that. So let me give you a little general information about the project. The property, as you know, is located off of Franklin Streets between 229 and 243. The total acreage of the property is 62 acres. There are 32 upland acres on the site. If you've read through our proposal, and hopefully you have, the proposal is to build 52 single-family home ownership units on the upland acreage. Each home is going to contain between 1,500 and 2,100 square feet, and the project will contain a mixture of 3 and 4 bedroom homes, and I'll give you the exact breakdown in just a few minutes. As you can see from all of the plans, there's a perennial stream that runs right through the middle of the project. Our proposal is to construct a bridge over that wetland area, resulting in a minimal disturbance to the wetland, basically through the piling process. Approximately 1,600 square feet would be disturbed, which is permissible under state law. It's called the Limited Access Project. May not be permissible under the local bylaw, but we're going to talk about waivers in a few minutes. Of the 52 homes, as you can tell from our application, 13 or 25% of the project have to be affordable and meet the state's requirements for addition to the subsidized inventory housing list, and that's exactly what our proposal would do. They'll be affordably deed restricted in perpetuity, and those deed restriction requirements is basically established by Nass Housing, required by us, and something that we're completely amenable to doing. Town of Halifax itself, as of December 5th, 2014, had 2,971 households. Only 28 units in the town of Halifax are considered affordable and are on the state's subsidized housing inventory, which means that Halifax has less than 1% of what it's required to have in order to meet affordable housing objectives. Town does not have the required number of qualified affordable units on greater than 1.5% of the total land area zoned for residential, commercial, or industrial use. Another reason you could deny a project: the applicant will not be constructing a certain amount of housing the town's not going to be constructing a certain amount of housing that would otherwise qualify you for a denial. And although the town does have a DHCD approved housing production plan, the town is not currently meeting its progress towards affordable housing goals. These all would be reasons for you to be able to say no to us right off the gate. So, in any event, some of our initial requirements are to demonstrate to you that we've met site control. Bumper LLC owns a portion of the property. The remainder is owned by the Springer companies. I've included the purchase and sale agreement in our packet, and that's under tab 4. We control the entirety of the property, the two principals. We do expect, either through a deed or an easement, to be able to connect a portion of this project to the abutting Halifax Country Club for the purposes of looping a water main. Something we're in the process of finalizing right now. We feel that would be a significant advantage to water quality and provision of water services in the event of a disaster down that area if we're able to loop the water mains. So it's something we do expect to be able to do. As you may be aware right now, it's a prerequisite to filing with you that we have changed a site eligibility letter from the Mass Housing, which is the subsidizing agency for this project. We were able to achieve that back on December 17th of 2014. We've included that in your packet. Just so you know, when we get a letter like that, the subsidizing agency, Mass Housing, is basically telling everybody that the project appears generally eligible under their subsidized housing program. They're saying that the site is generally appropriate for this type of a residential development. They're telling you and us that the concept is generally appropriate for the site in light of certain conditions. They're telling you that the project is financially feasible in light of some of the conditions, in light of the rental and housing market in the town of Halifax and the surrounding areas. They've looked at an initial pro forma, which we volunteered to give you. It's included as a part of the packet. And they believe, based upon the review of our preliminary pro forma, again, that the project is financially feasible and consistent with their guidelines for this type of a project. And as you heard Ms. Wong Ryan say before, the applicant, although today is not a limited dividend organization, will sign a regulatory agreement with Mass Housing and thereby agreeing to limit its profits on this project and become a limited dividend organization. So that brings us to our application, which I mentioned before. A little bit about Mr. Lincoln, and I'll have Mr. Springer speak in a few minutes, telling a little bit about himself. But Mr. Lincoln, under his developer profile, which I've included on tab 13, has been the developer of at least 4 prior 40B projects. The Welsh Woods project in Easton, which was 26 single-family homes, that's currently under construction. Wayside Farm off of North Bedford Street in East Bridgewater, that's 66 single-family units, also under construction. Webster Village in Hanover, that was 76 rental units, and North Point Apartments off of Washington Street in Hanover, that's across the street from the Shaws in Hanover. So he's got a significant amount of experience developing these type of projects. I'll give you a little bit of the details. I want to get a little bit more specific about some of this project. Under tab 7, we've basically given you a narrative of the history of this project and talked a little bit more about what we envision for the market rate and affordable units. 52 units, 39 are going to be market rate. There's going to be 6 4-bedroom units and 33 3-bedroom units. And on the affordable side, of the 13 units, there'll be 2 4-bedroom units and 11 3-bedroom units. So that's how it breaks down in terms of what we are proposing. The homes will be situated on various individual lots that will approximate 12,000 square feet on average. Some are a little larger, some are a little smaller, but that's exactly what the average works out to be. And there'll be a total density of this project of 1.6/1.7 units per acre, which is well within the guidelines of what the state tells us we should be doing when we develop a housing project with density in mind. We've provided you with a site layout plan, which is displayed over here on the easel and you have in front of you, and it's available to the public. We've given you proposed home layouts and architectural renderings of the proposed homes to give you a better flavor of the type of home that we anticipate building. These types of projects are very much encouraged. The town of Hingham, the town of Norwell, on their own have solicited requests for proposals to build these type of developments on smaller lots, a little bit smaller home. Sometimes you've heard them referred to as cottage-style developments. These are maybe a little bit different from what you consider a cottage style, but these are the types of homes that towns and municipalities themselves and their affordable housing trusts are looking to build. So it's very much in favor. We've given you a vital statistics summary under tab 9 telling you the gross square footage of all the homes, the net square footage of all the homes, our estimated water usage and wastewater disposal, which will be about 17,820 gallons per day. Each of the individual homes is going to be connected to its own subsurface septic system that complies in all respects with Title V. The only thing that we haven't completed yet is our soil testing. We have some additional soil testing that we've been unable to complete because of the winter conditions. It's something that we expect to be able to accomplish within the next 30 days. We'll provide that data to you as well. That information will also give you some information about the basins, and the percolation that would exist in the final design of the basins. The stormwater will be managed by an on-site stormwater management system that complies in all respects with the stormwater management regulations provided by the Department of Environmental Protection. That's something that you'll probably want to have peer reviewed. Absolutely no problem with that, and that's why we provided our peer review fees to be held in escrow. Although, as I indicated before, we're not required to provide you with a pro forma, we want to be completely transparent with the board so that you know what we expect to gain, what we expect to lose, what we expect to spend the money on as we develop this project. Obviously, it's a best case scenario, where there'd be an appeal or a delay or where we find some unsuitable conditions. Things like that might affect some of the numbers, but generally speaking, that's what we expect this project to generate, what we expect the units to sell for, and what we expect to make. Hopefully, we'll do better than what we expected, because in the event we do that, the town of Halifax will have money returned to it if we exceed the profit limitations which are established by the laws. You would then in turn be able to use that to assist the town in developing further affordable housing projects. So we've also provided you with a list of anticipated waivers. It's a preliminary list at this particular stage, but as you have already seen tonight, some of the rules that you have are probably a little bit antiquated. They're not wrong. They just have been superseded by some of the rulings that have taken place at the Housing Appeals Committee and in the judicial system.
Where are those listed? What tab are those listed on there?
Those are under tab 10.
10.
Yes, and I'll go through them in a little bit more specific detail, but generally speaking, some of the rules are probably worthy of updating at this particular stage. I mentioned the Amesbury case. I mentioned it in my filing there. It's specifically called out on the waiver list. The significance of that case for you all is that the subsidizing agency has great discretion over the affordability requirements. And if you've adopted any local standards or any rules that conflict with their view, the Amesbury case tells us that it's the subsidizing agency's discretion and interpretation that controls. And to the extent boards in the past have attempted to conduct conditions or denial on the basis of things that are in the province of the subsidizing agency, that case tells you that it's no longer permissible to do so. We talked a little earlier about the review fees, and the applicant had requested a waiver on that, and thank you very much for granting that. The basis for that waiver comes out of the Haskins Way case in Middleborough, which cites precedent from the Housing Appeals Committee that says you can't impose a requirement on an affordable project that wouldn't otherwise be equally applicable to a conventional requirement. And that was the basis for that waiver. So again, I don't want to go into a great amount of detail at this particular point, but the board probably is familiar with the fact that in 2008, my client submitted an application under Chapter 40B for 126 units of duplex housing on this property. That took about a 2-year time frame. Over that 2-year period of time, it was reduced to 62 units. The belief in 2010 was that that type of project could be permitted conventionally. So my client withdrew his application for comprehensive permit and proceeded through the conventional channels to develop that project. The project was actually narrowed down to about 51 rental units, and the Board of Appeals granted a special permit sometime in about 2010 or 11. The reality is that project could not be made to comply with the Board of Health regulations as related to some very stringent percolation requirements. So therefore the project was basically abandoned. I'm going to be right up front with you. Waivers are necessary to construct this project. Waivers are going to be necessary to probably construct any type of a project because the local regulations are generally more stringent than the state law. What we have to do is design a project that basically complies with state law and any of the most important local regulations that the board wishes to uphold and that will not render this project uneconomic. And we'll be happy to tell you if you've got some ideas of things that you'd like to see us incorporate, what we can and what we can't do in order to make this project go forward. So we are very well aware of the issues raised by the town because before we submitted this application to you, we did apply to Mass Housing for a site eligibility letter, and we were told that we need to be concerned about the impact on our abutters neighborhood abutters. We were told about the Historic Commission's request for an archaeologic survey. We were told about concerns that the town had about stormwater and some concerns about a single entrance that we had on Franklin Street. We have submitted a traffic impact study already. It's the same traffic study that we used with respect to the prior project, which was far more dense. At a future meeting, we'd be happy to bring the McMahon Traffic Engineering firm to kind of reaffirm some of the statements and opinions they had before. Our idea, generally speaking, with respect to the entrance would be to construct a boulevard-style entrance, providing some definition at the street, which is a very customary thing. But the one thing you'll hear very much through the entirety of this project is that the roadways are going to be constructed so that they're sufficiently wide enough for at least 2 emergency vehicles to pass by one another, even in adverse weather conditions, and we'll have a sidewalk. The only area that'd be a potential pinch point, and we still think we have plenty of room for safe emergency service access, would be over the bridge. But the bridge, as it's being designed, you'll see, will also have appropriate extra area in the event that there were any adverse weather conditions that would impact that. So probably at this particular stage, I'd like this to introduce Rick. Maybe Rick can come out and say a few things, that if I missed anything. No?
I don't think so, but I'll say a few things.
Well, it was my intention to give you just a general overview of the project tonight. I'm sure we're going to have more than one hearing in this matter.
Yes.
Okay. And then maybe I just introduce Dave Herron from Conoco. Dave, do you want to add anything to anything I've stated so far?
No, I think you've covered everything, Bob.
Okay.
Where the engineering hasn't gone too far as of yet, I'd like to just hold off with any comments.
We told you we need to do some more percolation testing to prove compliance, and obviously the weather, as everybody knows, has prevented that from being realistic. It's tough to get in there when you have to go through 2 or 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, I would say, because, good evening, Rick Springer from Clinton. Most of you know me, I know most of you have built homes in Halifax for quite a few years. We did all the homes in Kenzie's Path, along with a couple of budding lots in that same area. We built all the homes in Country Club Estates for 106 at the Halifax Country Club. Several other homes over on Bosworth and Cranberry Road. And, you know, our company's been constructing single-family homes in this area for quite a while. So we have a reputation that hopefully is good with our customers. We try to put out a quality product at a fair price. Just a couple things I wanted to point out to you. If I may, I'll go over here and point out. On this particular lot here, it was owned by Glenn Gregory prior to Mr. Lincoln purchasing the retreat lot that runs behind Mr. Gregory's house. Part of the deal was to put in a new septic system and connect his house to town water. Well, I was in charge of doing that. Conoco actually did the engineering for that new septic system, and we did several perk tests in his backyard with Kathy Dryden, the health agent. And we found that there was 6 or 8 feet of sand in that area. It perked very well. We didn't have to do a mounted system to put in a new septic on that. We also did perks out in this area here because, you know, Mr. Lincoln wanted to make sure that was going to be a viable retreat lot. If the development didn't go through, we still wanted to have a viable retreat lot. And we found the same thing out here. There was anywhere from 5 to 6 feet of good sand underneath the subsoil. Mr. Galvin had mentioned the boulevard type entrance, and one of the things that we are concerned about, I think we will address with future engineering, is that the drainage will actually be in the center of that between the 2 roads. It's good sand there. It'll collect the water rather than dumping it out onto Franklin Street. It'll collect the water in this area. It'll come off the road. The other detention areas, we haven't had a chance to get out there and get them perked yet. But when I first owned this property back in 2003, myself and Joe Webby walked the whole thing with a backhoe, and we did 13 perks out there, and we found the soils to be very suitable for subsurface sanitary systems. So it's not like we're coming in blind and knowing, you know, we know that there is good perks out there. So, I just wanted to point out a couple things on the homes. These homes are designed, for several different people, several different types of people that might want to purchase them. This one here in particular, I want to point out, has a garage and a first floor master bedroom. You have the layout there. And we feel there'll be a lot of people that are here in Halifax that might want to downsize into something a little smaller, a little more convenient. This is designed for that type of person. Maybe an older couple that wants a less maintenance. These would be maintenance-free homes, vinyl siding, AZAC trim, that type of thing. So there won't be a lot of maintenance. The lots, Mr. Gallo said they were 12.5. That's a minimum lot size. There's a couple lots in there that are probably over an acre. I'd say the average is closer to 17,000, 18,000 square feet, maybe even 20,000 on a lot. However, the actual yard areas will be relatively small compared to an acre lot, which is a regular zoning in Halifax. Halifax you have to have 40,000 square feet of contiguous upland to get a house lot under current zoning. So these will appeal to people that, don't really want a big yard to maintain or a lot of painting to do and a lot of upkeep. So we feel it's going to be a benefit. We feel that it's not going to be crammed with, 1,000 school kids. That's why we've designed these houses, so that it will appeal to a variety of different people with different needs. They're not large houses. Most of them are 3-bedroom. I think that's about it, unless somebody has some questions for me.
Maybe we should just, I indicated that I'd kind of give you a flavor of some of the exemptions that are required. As an attorney, when you're going through a project like this, I literally will get all of the local general bylaws, your subdivision rules and regulations, your zoning bylaw. I read your rules, obviously. I basically prepare a list of what I think would preclude a project like this to be built. And it's not intended to be insulting to the town when I ask for these regulations, but some of these really would be an impediment to the construction of this type of a project. With respect to the rules that I've noted, they didn't have a specific number, but they had heading. And a lot of these rules that I've cited that are your rules are just actually, they'd be fine, they probably just need to be a little bit updated, because I think they were last updated in 2009, and there's 5 or 6 years worth of case law now that would help you craft some better rules. And I'm more than happy to give you some additional detail, and I'm sure your consultant will also be able to guide you if you needed to do that. With respect to the zoning bylaw, obviously if the minimum lot size exceeds the amount of lot area that we're proposing in these homes, we would need that type of a variance. But most of the homes will meet or exceed your setback requirements, which would be what people generally think are necessary for certain spaciousness and safety and fire protection. There will be hydrants here every 500 feet, and that's something I know Mr. Springer's already spoken to the fire chief about, although there isn't a formal review at this particular stage. In terms of your subdivision rules and regulations, we would not probably be following all of the technical details until we knew what we had in terms of a conceptual approved plan. But I think you'll find that the planning board's principal concern is safe access and egress, sufficient size, and good engineering practice, and all of that would be demonstrated. The Board of Health bylaw actually was the impediment to the conventional development of the site, so we've asked for the waivers specifically as it relates to the site regulations and the septic systems. There are some other permits and approvals under your general bylaws, like trench permits. We'll be complying with OSHA requirements. Soil removal, it's a little preliminary to say whether we'd need to remove any soil. The soil, as you know, is actually very good. If we have any, it's probably likely to occur in the area where there's the wetlands crossing. We are proposing streets that will comply probably with and be better in quality and condition than many roads in towns, probably some that are or even accepted as public ways. And we will have sidewalk throughout the entire development to facilitate people and pedestrian access and walking throughout the site. And we are proposing this project will have public water and that water be looped. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, does anyone have any questions? If you would just come to the mic and give us your name, please.
Hey, Mike Warner, Franklin Street. I just wanted to find out if we could get the prints handed out to everyone.
Sure.
We first got the application for this. We sent out copies everywhere, fire department, planning, board of health, library, town clerk's office. Everybody has gotten a copy of it. There is a full set of copies at the library. This is kind of the Bible we have at the moment. If anybody wants to go down and look, we're going to break this up into different segments and go basically department by department. One we have already received is from the Historical Commission. What I'd like to do now is have it, do we need to read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to read Susan Basile's letter into the minutes. Copies were just handed to the applicant, and we will, our next meeting will be on that. That's acceptable to you guys, and what your answers to some of these questions would be. Where is it?
That one,
This one?
from what I can see, this distance here. Yes, is that the That's the one, right?
So, that's my question.
Deb has it in the email?
Yeah, okay. Marion, I am forwarding this to you as I don't have an email for Deb Tinkham. Please see that the members of the ZBA see this. I will be the liaison for the Historical Commission. I have read over the material on petition 826, application for Chapter 40B comprehensive permit project for Blackledge Farm, Franklin Street, Halifax, Mass, and have a few questions. I am not sure if I will be able to attend the meeting. We'll make every effort to do so, so I am forwarding you my questions. Question 1 is a Historical Commission matter. The others are my own. Number 1, I sent an email to Mass Historical Commission to Jonathan Patton asking if they ever received a request for a permit to conduct any archaeological survey for this project, and his answer was no. Copy of the email is attached. I have asked to have this done a number of years ago. In fact, Robert Pellegrini Jr. received a letter from MHC back in 2008 in regards to this matter. Robert Richard Lincoln Jr. received a letter from MHS in July of 2014 for the same reason. Number 2, I am curious as to why there are no handicap units. This may be something you could answer for me, as I don't know what the requirements for Chapter 40B project entails. This is a personal question, not from the committee. One would think it would be nice to have a few houses available for a family with a handicapped child that might want to live in a small town in a new affordable house, or a wounded veteran might like to live here, something I would like to see them think about. Number 3, Section 12, page 1, 104 single-family homes. Is all this material from their last presentation? Number 4, Section 12, page 1, there is a section that mentions potential measures to improve deficiencies on the surrounding roadways, and their comment was, roadways are adequate to accommodate development. When was this study done? This will only bring heavy traffic during the development, trucks and equipment coming and going over that back road that is already caving in due to the heavy truck traffic it sees now. The tractor trailers, as well as people going to and from work, use Franklin Street as a shortcut to Plymouth Street in order to avoid the 3 traffic signals on Plymouth Street when they are heading west on Route 106. And when the project is completed, it will bring even more traffic to Franklin and South Streets. Number 5, Section 12, page 4, there is a statement saying no posted speed limit in the study area. True, would like to see signs put up. Small 3-foot wide raised median in disrepair at approach of Franklin Street and South Street should be removed. Hasn't this been done already? It also mentions an enter here sign that is overgrown by pine tree. Sign should be removed. Not sure where or if it is still there. Again, I agree if it indeed is found. Number 6, section 12, page 4, talks about table 1 from 2004 to 2006 study, intersection with highest crash rate at the corner of Plymouth Street and Carver Street. Study not indicative of safety deficiencies, and they expect below average crash rates. Any of us that live here know there is so much more traffic pulling out from Carver Street onto Plymouth Street during certain hours now than back then, as well as the fact that the new houses that have been built on Franklin Street are adding more traffic to the area. Why wasn't a new traffic study done to show a 2014 traffic count? And with 52 more homes going in, that would bring at least 104, if not more, vehicles to that roadway just coming in and out of the new development. Number 7, section 12, page 11. Again, they are using old information. This roadway needs to have improvements made to it if this project is to be allowed by the town. What is a significant growth in population for us? And we are not the only ones that use this roadway. We need to consider growth surrounding us. The manual turning movement counts were from 2008, 7 years ago. As to the comment, no new land development project in the vicinity of the study area were identified. None of us know what tomorrow will bring. Look at the new development on the street since these studies were done. And at the recent special town meeting, the new residents on Franklin Street turned down the proposal for a purchase of land for a cemetery there. They rather have more homes and neighbors bringing more traffic. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, Susan Basile, Chairman of the Halifax Historical Society. I don't expect any kind of answers tonight. We can talk about this at our next meeting and go from there.
I did speak to Mr. Gavin this afternoon on the phone, and I told him that one board did respond, which was the Historical Commission, and until Chairman Tinkham acknowledged the email, would I release a copy to you, and I can forward it to you via email, but it would be appreciated that all responses basically correspond with the email. So as Ms. Basile did it, 1, 2, 3, 4, like we would like it to respond in that similar facet, so then that way it's easier to follow. And Mr. Gavin said that was not a problem.
And I know this is sort of way down the road, but anytime that you have a meeting with either another board or another department head or something, if we could get a synopsis of what was discussed in writing.
We'd be happy to do that. And put it in a memo and send it to you.
Yes, please. Okay.
I could probably give you some very preliminary answers to some of this stuff. The traffic-related comments will be the subject. We'll have our traffic engineer respond and probably give you additional details and information.
Okay.
So that'll come as soon as we can relay these comments to our traffic engineer. And we'll bring him, if the board would like him to come in to answer questions, perhaps at the time the peer review consultant looks at the traffic impacts of the project. So that's not a problem at all. With respect to the Mass Historical Commission, General Laws, Chapter 9, Sections 26 through 27C, basically are the state laws that govern unauthorized digging and unmarked burials. We would inevitably, if we were to gain an approval will be subject to filing a project notification form with Mass Historical. There's no local requirement to file anything with the local historic commission. This very same issue came up in the town of Norwell involving a project known as Simon Hill. On the Simon Hill project, residents and abutters had located piles of stone that had been, that looked to the average person like a stone wall or the remnants of a stone wall, but in fact were believed to be Indian artifacts and a way of navigating. There were also chips that were maybe remnants of arrowheads and things like that located on the site. And the Norwell Board of Appeals actually engaged somebody to look at that issue. But it was so preliminary, and everybody knew in the end that the subject site would have to be the subject of a state filing. We would absolutely expect to have to comply with state law in this regard and get their approval prior to any work being started. But if we don't really have a project approved by the local board, we probably wouldn't even get to that stage. But I'd be happy to give you a little memo explaining that process, how we would go about it. And I think the concern is very legitimate and a very fair condition going forward, that we have to comply with the state requirements for that. So, and obviously, if there's a problem, they're going to tell us, and we're going to have to absolutely positively comply with their recommendations. One other thing I thought I could address, we would absolutely be willing to convert a couple of the affordable units to make them fully handicap accessible. A market rate customer is free of contract with Bowser LLC to make any type of modifications that are necessary to make the units more accessible to future owners. Absolutely something we're willing to do with both respects, both the market and the affordable.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Ezra Glenn. I'm a consultant to the board
Yes.
Under a statewide program that run by Mass Housing Partnership. So I'm not a town employee. I'm not actually even paid by the town. The state pays me through Mass Housing Partnership, but I'm here to provide technical assistance for these 40B projects because they can be, a sort of an undue burden on the town. Normally review these, and these are all experts in your town zoning ordinance, or zoning bylaw, but not all the 40B requirements. So that's just so you know who I am here. What they tell me when they say, get out there in Halifax and help out, and by help out what they mean is sort of try to bring order to the chaos. And these can be sort of chaotic projects. Like any large development, it's chaotic. It's made more chaotic because there's certain state laws kind of breathing down the town's neck about how quickly they have to review it. So we really don't have a ton of time to play with sort of messing around, which is, okay. I mean, no one wants to mess around, waste your time, and waste their time, and waste the developers' time and money. So the real key is trying to figure out how to segment this. I usually, at the very beginning, like to break it into two things. One is, what more information do we need before we can even figure this out? And the other is, what are the issues we want to discuss, and what's the proper order to discuss them in? And you've already gotten a little taste of that. Sort of an issue thrown out was historic preservation, what's about the archaeological survey of the site. And the developer sort of put out there, well, yes, that's an issue, but it makes sense from my point of view to do that at the very end. And that's not unreasonable. There is the possibility you could get way to the very end, have an approved plan, do the survey and realize, oh, you can't build it exactly how you wanted because of what the survey showed. But that's kind of a risk they would take. And it's not an unreasonable one. We could say, no, that's our top issue we want to address now. So I think, if possible, I'd like to just make sure we have communicated to the developers, first off, what additional information we think that they need to give us. And then secondly, I've already heard us discuss traffic, circulation, historic, wetlands, health, stormwater, and see if there's any other issues and what order to put those in to schedule your meetings moving forward, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, thank you.
In terms of more information, there's some that would definitely come as we looked into those issues, like a traffic study, and funding for a traffic peer review of your study, that sort of stuff. There was one part of your packet that I think is important for the to see if the board would request more information. And that's exactly that tab 10, where you talk about the required exemptions.
Yes.
You presented some information showing the project as you'd like to do it. And you've sort of said, we know it doesn't comply with some of your regulations, and that's why you're coming under 40B. You've spoken, I think I agree with almost everything you said about the board's regulations about comp permits and how those are kind of a little antiquated, and, we get that. Some of the other things that you've said, we'd like an exemption, you've been pretty general. You've said we'd like an exemption from this section, from the entire bylaw, from anywhere we don't need it. And I think that's sort of asking the board to do your job, finding where this doesn't need it. It's kind of like, if you were to say, my wife's pregnant, I got her raced to the hospital, and the cop said, okay, what do you need? And you said, well, I just want to be able to speed. And he said, okay, that's fine. And then you go through a red light, and you say, well, I didn't tell you about going through the red lights. I had to do that too, right? He wants to know at the beginning, before he proves what you're going to go do, what you're looking for permission to vary from. And I think the board, I'm sure knows their zoning well enough to look through this, scratch their head, figure out where it doesn't meet, but you should do that as well, because part of it is you're not supposed to be asking for any exemption you don't need. You've got to do the hard work of making this fit as much as possible, and where you really can't make it work, coming back and saying, here's the minimal exemption I need and why. And I think that's even more so for these parts about the Board of Health regulations, or the conservation, the local wetlands bylaw. So if you could really go through with a fine-tooth comb and say, chapter and verse, what section you're not meeting and why and how much you're not meeting. Don't just say, I don't meet the lot size. I don't meet the lot size on this unit because the requirement's 40,000 and it's only 18. On this one, the requirement's 40,000 and it's 32. Bing, bing, bing. Same as the, Board of Health rules. That's what I would think would make your job a lot easier, because, and protects you guys as well, because at the end of this, hopefully, is approval of something. And you want to be able to go to the bank knowing I've checked off everything, I've permission to do it exactly as we said. So that's the first thing that's right there.
Thank you.
If Madam Chair doesn't mind, I have a memo from the fire chief dated today. It was just received during the meeting, and I will be giving a copy to each of you, and a copy to the applicant, Mr. So this was just received this evening.
Okay.
Just like this from the fire chief today, just now.
Okay. So should I read this in?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So having said all that, we just received this. Dear Board, as requested, I have reviewed the application for Black Ledge Farm. I respectfully request that the following stipulations be made prior to issuing the permit. 1, fire hydrants shall be located on a looped water main with spacing, placement, and flow rates that are approved by the Water Department and Fire Department. 2, the proposed bridge over the Common Mill Brook be capable of supporting at least 1.5 times the weight of our heaviest fire apparatus. 3, all turning radiuses on the roads shall accommodate our largest apparatus. Number 4, construction or delivery of building supplies shall not begin until the road is of sufficient quality to support emergency vehicle traffic in all weather conditions. 5, street signs approved by the town shall be in place prior to construction. 6, building permits shall be issued to the street address and not the lot number. I will be attending the ZBA meeting on March 16th and may have additional questions or stipulations requests after that meeting. I have included as attachment letters written by previous fire chiefs regarding Black Ledge proposals. Respectfully, Jason Viveras. Thank you.
Those are all very reasonable conditions. I would expect that we would be complying in all respects.
Okay. Chief, did you have anything more to add or a question?
I did have two questions that came come up while I watched the presentation. One was if the brook fell in any of the FEMA flood plain maps.
It is within the flood zone.
So that might be something, I didn't know that prior, so it might be something that we need to research a little more, because in the event that there was a flood, there's technically no possible, only with one entrance into the property, there'd be no way for us to access the property if there was a fire or a medical emergency down there.
Okay.
Because it is in the flood zone, there's only one entrance. And the other was regarding street names. How would, would there be 3 distinct street names proposed, or?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
So I think one would be very confused,
Right.
from our perspective, would be really confusing, so I think there
I
would
would-
actually need to be 3.
Yeah, I would think we'd want to put one name to here, one
Let's
name
call it,
to
right.
there, and one there.
That would be my recommendation, but now knowing that is considered a floodplain is something that we'll go back and do some research
I mean,
on.
not all of it's floodplain, only parts of it.
No, but the brook, if the brook is considered flood area, and we only have one entrance into that, we'd have to
The
take.
bridge would be constructed at an elevation that would exceed the greatest storm, so.
Okay, so that would, I mean, if that was made as a stipulation and,
Yeah, and we're gonna come in with some structural drawings and elevations for the bridge. So you can, we'll leave those for you as well, for your review.
okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, so I think next is set up our next meeting.
Just to let you know, the only committee that I did hear from, which has not released a memo, but was in their meeting taped, and it will be in the minutes, is from the Halifax Elementary School Committee, since I sit in those meetings. They did appoint someone from the board, from their committee, to be the designated liaison. And also that the impact report was a request from the applicant to come out following the granting of the application. And they would like to see the impact report, the school committee would like to see the impact report prior.
To understand the number of children that would
Exactly, because that
would be
would,
projected. from
52
the
single-family homes is pretty significant for them, and
And then prior to
prior
the
to...
board's decision?
Right, yes, because at this point in time, I think the impact report is being requested to be submitted following the granting with conditions.
I have to discuss this with Mr. Springer, Mr. Lincoln. There are people that are available to estimate the impact on a development, and, we would think that this would be a positive impact
Right.
anyways.
And they-
These will be not, it'll be a positive impact with the tax dollars that would result.
And I asked them to still submit it in a written form, but that
Sure.
did come from their meeting, so I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure.
If I could, I mean, I would,
Please do.
I think now we're basically getting into the sort of identification of issues and trying to figure out how to spend the next few meetings. You tend to see the same group of issues come up in any large development, as I'm sure you know. I mean, there's always something about traffic, there's always something about stormwater, there's always questions of wetlands regulations and Board of Health. There's a kind of a natural order that you've probably uncovered in your own reviews as well. I think for this one, I'd probably recommend that we front load these traffic and circulation issues, especially because we have only the one road through, right? We can basically, assuming there's an internal circulation that sort of makes sense and works for fire and public safety, the biggest traffic issue is going to be what does that exit onto, is it Franklin?
Franklin.
Look like, right? And as long as you've worked that out, knowing there's 52 units and no more somewhere upstream of it, and you're happy with what comes out of that box, that pipe, you know, that entryway, you don't really care too much how they're configured up there at the beginning, right? So you could sort of review the traffic, and if you find there's no way you can get 52 units of cars out of there, then we've got a problem we've got to deal with first, right? Once you get through the traffic and ideally some of that internal circulation stuff, I'd recommend the wetlands, because you need to make sure you're okay crossing that brook. Once you get that, then you have an access, you have a road in, then we're probably getting into these Board of Health the sort of Board of Health percolation questions, which I suppose works pretty well with the developer's timetable in terms of giving them a little bit of time to get those perk results they're looking for. Once you have all that, then I think we haven't talked much about the sort of internal configuration. Do we like the clustering of the units? Do we think there's enough setbacks? And then you get into those things. But there's no point in even talking about those until you're sure you have access, until you're sure you've addressed the wetlands and the Board of Health. Does that seem like a sort of a reasonable flow there? What would be important is as soon as possible to hear from abutters if there's any other issues that we're not aware of. I think in that last group there would be stuff like screening, looking at the abutter impacts and how that affects the configuration. But given where there's upland and where there's wetland, it's pretty clear where the developed portion would be. It's just a question of how exactly it goes and where you. So that's, I guess, what I'd recommend is, and for the residents in the room, it's important to know this doesn't get decided tonight. These typically go on for 3, 4, as many as 6 months. We try not to just spin our wheels, but we also try not to rush it. And there's a lot of back and forth in terms of the technical review. And the state does limit the town to about 180 days. There's some ways that can be extended if there's sort of a productive process and some back and forth going on. But basically, you don't want to see it go more than about 180 days. And you don't want to see it go more than 3 or 4 months if it doesn't have to. So to me, that seems like you spend the next meeting on traffic and circulation, maybe then get into the wetlands and the health, and then start talking about any aesthetic site plan, screening, those sort of things. Are there other issues the board was?
Well, the only other thing was, Ed and I already talked about it, was the historical commission. Did
Yeah.
we bring that up in the beginning?
It sounds like you brought it up and the developer said, we know it's an issue, we want to deal with it at the very end.
Yeah, I have to discuss this with Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Springer, kind of outside the meeting process. We'll decide whether there's some information we can provide you in advance. But, before you spend the money on an archaeological survey, you want to know you have a project. And my advice will probably be that, we would obviously agree to any type of condition that required us to comply with the state law requirements to file a project notification. What happens at Mass Historical is then they go out, they do all of their research, they let you know in about 30 days whether the site had some type of historic significance that would warrant further information from them. Then they tell you what you have to do. But a lot of it, it may result in a negative, it might result in a positive, and then if it results in a positive, they'll tell you what you need to do. And a lot of times it ends up in a protocol that when you're developing, if you see this, this, and this is what you have to do. And it's not unheard of that, given the known, natural Native American presence in the area, that you will find some things. In Marshfield, when they were expanding the runway, they found a cottage the foundation remnants of a cottage at the end of one of the runways that had to be preserved and relocated. These are things that happen. So again, I wouldn't be surprised, but it would probably be our preference to proceed with the project, understanding that we have no project if a full survey required by Mass Historical creates a problem.
Okay. So now we need to just set a date for the next meeting.
Right, so one thing we were discussing is, as part of this process, there's likely to be some pretty technical reports submitted. And certainly the town has experts to look at them, but the town also has the option of requesting funding from the developer to hire their own experts, whether they're traffic engineers, stormwater engineers, and that sort of stuff, and that's a fairly typical thing. It would probably help with the process knowing, seems like we all know you're going to be doing a
Yeah,
traffic.
well, we
report.
provided the $12,750 so that the board could engage a peer review consultant as soon as possible. And,
Right.
you know, if you'd like to do that, we'd love to see that process start now so that we knew who we would be supplying information to in addition to the board.
So does the board need to take a vote to get quotes? Is that what you normally do?
That you would like me to proceed in setting
Setting
up
up for bids.
for engineering companies. And using maybe similar, reviewing engineers that we have had in the past. I think I sent you a list of some of our abutting towns that have significant conservation issues, like Halifax, Marshfield. The town hall is very,
Our only concern in the process is that we would get the ability to review the potential scope of services.
yes.
We would probably not find anybody that you would choose to be objectionable.
The
You know,
last-
there is a statutory process for us to challenge somebody if we thought they were, but it's very rarely used, and I can't access it.
In the-
Whoever you've used in the past is fine, and whoever you'd pick would probably be fine too.
The former engineering, peer review engineering company we used, I don't know, some of the board members weren't here, was Seacoast Engineering, Paul Grogna, so I didn't know if that would be one that the board would entertain in resending the application out to along with others.
Oh, absolutely.
Just Paul, we sent it out, the first one, sent out to about 8 to 9. Found out that a good portion of those were significantly higher in cost, and we're able to then eliminate it to about 3 to 4. So I would like to stick within the 3 to 4, along with the ones that other town halls have recommended with a good, with specialty in conservation, since there's so many of those issues here. And also revisit Paul Brunner if the board would like.
Depending on the size of the towns that and their experiences in the past. I think that's how we did it pretty much the last time. Would you like a motion? I'll make a motion if you'd like, that we do have Marion begin the process of a minimum of at least 4 peer engineered companies based on size, our past experience, and to send out letters in hope for a bid process to begin.
And what I would do is send them the PDFs of the the packets that you have, but in PDF form, so that
Sure,
way
they
they can
can
start
forward it.
reviewing it. So that might help in the getting
Spread
out.
this along.
Yes.
Madam Chairman? I'm also doing a subdivision on Montponce called Town Road. The house has been built, the road isn't quite complete, it will be complete this spring. But the review engineer for the planning board is engineer services from Bridgewater by the name of Larry Silva. So I just wanted to throw that out there. He is working in town already. I know I've worked with him on that particular subdivision for the planning board, and seems to do a fine job. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion.
Yeah, I have actually mentioned it to conservation and the planning board secretaries as they're aware of this project. And if there's anyone that their board would recommend. So that is on the table for them to discuss, and that the zoning board would take that into consideration. So I'll talk to Terrence Small and see how the relationship has been from this side with Larry Silva, and if she recommends it.
It's usually in customary, it could be at the beginning, it could be once you get the quotes, and just make sure there's no conflict.
Right.
You might as well do it before
Yeah,
we send them
the
out.
only objections that we can raise under statute is if there's a conflict of interest or if the credentials are not sufficient to evaluate the issues, so.
So if you're okay, we'll develop a scope, run by a list of things, get 3 quotes, and hopefully have somebody, on board or possibly on board for the next meeting when we need them. I mean, they're most important once we start getting the reports, whether they're traffic, whether they're stormwater. But we don't want to lose 3 weeks procuring something.
Okay. So I do have a motion, hold on one second. I do have a motion to go ahead and start setting out bids for the peer review consultants. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, I'll call for a voice vote. Bob?
Yes.
Bert?
Yes.
Sahaya?
Yes.
And Peter?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So it passes 5-0. It's just, yeah, it is. Okay, so Mary, I'm going on that. And, okay, sir,
I had another question, was there?
come on down.
Yep.
State your name, please.
Rick Corby, I'm at the end of Musterfield Lane, and I've been there for 10 years now. I know when I purchased the property there, it was under the understanding the property behind me was not buildable. It may have changed, maybe it is now. But the question I had too was, is there a reason why there's not a second exit out there? Is that the land's not owned over there to get out on the other side? And about lighting, what's the lighting gonna be there? Is it gonna be lit up like Gillette back there, or is it?
Well, we haven't developed a lighting
Sure.
plan, but I mean, I would imagine that we're gonna do street lighting that just faces down, so I really can't imagine there's gonna be anything. The reason there's not another way out is because the only other property that we own is right here, that's upland, but it requires a significant amount of wetland crossing to get back out to Franklin Street. Over on this side is the country club. Yeah, the country club owns this property here. Again, we're gonna loop the water line through here, Mr. Peck's already agreed to that. However, if the road came out here, it would have to come through, again, significant wetlands, plus it would come out onto Fairway Drive. And I don't think the residents of Fairway Drive would be very happy about that.
So it's not an option to cut through that way then?
No, we don't own the property there. We just don't own it. The only property that we own to get out is over here. And again, it's such a significant wetland crossing that it's economically unfeasible. That's why we're proposing the double barrel down here, because there really is two roads in that 70-foot area that we already own. And as far as your house, I believe, is here, be several hundred feet before you get to the first house. The scale is 1 inch equals 100 feet, so that my estimate's 8 to 10 inches, so that's 800 to 1,000 feet of woods and wetlands that will not be touched. So I don't believe that there will be much of an impact, I wouldn't think, on your particular property.
Thanks, Rick.
Sir?
Josh Prater, 243 Franklin Street. Just curious, I know the market changes, but what is the market value of these homes like right now?
It's in the package, but we're proposing them to start at $339. That would be a 3-bedroom Cape-style home with a porch, 2.5 bathrooms. This is proposed at $339 for the market rate unit. And then they go up to the largest, which is this one. I believe, is that the biggest one? Dave? Yeah.
Sure, the square footage is on the lower left.
Yeah, it's a little over 2,000 square feet with a garage. That's the 4-bedroom. Yeah, that's the 4-bedroom unit. Right. And that's proposed at $409. So between $330 and $400,000.
And they listed the affordable ones at $192.
Right. Those are mandated by state law.
That's a quarter of the houses. Right.
Yeah.
Still a 3-bedroom though, correct?
3 and 4.
3 and 4.
Well, a couple too. It's 4.
Yeah, there has to be 25% of each model that
Yeah.
you build as affordable. So we're proposing 8 of these, so that means 2 of them have to be affordable. And they would not be, driving by, you would not be able to tell what an affordable was or what a market rate unit was. From the outside, they look exactly the same. And inside, they can be changed a little bit, but the significant is that it's, and you can't put them all in the same spot in the development. So affordables will be equally distributed throughout the whole development. 13 will not be in one area.
Just one other point, I thought it'd be wise to stress that I was surprised reading the comments received to date, how much people really wanted to be sure that the site wasn't touched at all until you have a permanent hand. You know, that if there are mature trees out there, they should stay there. If there's, you know, that you want to, as much as possible, preserve everything you have and only touch the very minimal you'll need to. And sometimes projects can get out ahead of themselves, you know, and start to disturb things, and you can't put a mature tree back. So I just wanted to make sure that was really clear.
I was we're proposing to do anything but a very bare minimum when we do some perk tests. And, you know, I have to talk some more to my clients, but, you know, it's very likely we'll be proposing some open spaces and conservation restrictions as part of the final plans that'll ensure in perpetuity, you know, that the open space isn't touched and it provides the buffer, including to Mr. Corby's property and things like that.
I think it's important too, we have a big advantage over the fact that we've gone around with this proposal, or a proposal on this particular piece of property. So a lot of the concerns and oppositions and big concerns have already been brought out. So we have a big advantage that we'll be able to address them at the very beginning. But my only point is I couldn't agree more with Mr. Glenn, and I think Mr. Springer will attest also that our board, whether we're doing a comprehensive plan or whether it's a regular construction site for a development in our home, our board has never practiced any open-ended type variance where it's a carte blanche type thing. We've always been specific, detailed as to what variance is and how it's going to be variance into specific degrees. So I couldn't agree more that we would be definitely, there's one of, at least I can speak for myself, my major concern that any variance for any individual area would have to be quite specific and spelled out. So
And the only reason I framed them the way I did now was because there's still some details that need to be ironed out, and I agree that we can narrow those down.
Right.
And I would expect that your ultimate decision in the end will say, except as specifically waived,
Right.
all of the local rules will apply.
Knowing that a variance would be needed for a specific reason, but when it gets right down to the detail, of
We'll
course.
be very specific in
Mr.
that.
Springer, he has never had a problem with our board before, but he knows that that's how we work.
I appreciate that, thank you.
That's all.
I guess the next, things to discuss maybe the next meeting night. I wish I could tell the board what I will have in front of me for the next meeting for special permits. At this point in time, I'm projecting 2 special permits for pre-existing in-law apartments, which should move fluidly. But that's all I know, and the deadline for the April 13th meeting is March 23rd, next Monday. So I guess it's the discretion of the board if you want to continue on this regular public hearing nights and then adjourn it here, or if you have it separately. I know eventually down the line, as it gets more involved, the board may want to have a separate public hearing for this, but since we're in the initial stages, it's completely at the discretion of the board. But right now, for the April 13th regularly scheduled public hearing, right now I have nothing on the agenda, but I am expecting 2 special permits before the board. They haven't been done yet, but that's what I'm expecting. And that's all I can say.
Do you want to combine them with our regular hearings for now? Or do separate?
It was specifically just for comprehensive.
Or like Marion suggested, where it's still, we're still gathering information.
Oh, just at the beginning.
In the beginning, have them on the same nights.
Well, I would recommend we try that, you know, until we collect them. And as it gets more complicated, more involved, more detailed, then we'd probably have to separate. Why don't we try at least for the April meeting to see how
To keep
the
it
information,
joint.
and we'll keep it combined
Combined.
until we're almost
And
forced to have to
if
split
if
it.
the board is okay with it, we started tonight at 6:30. If the board is okay with it, if we move it a little bit up, then we can get to this one at a timely fashion.
Well,
See-
that would all depend on, like you
On
said,
the
on the
amount of
number of
filings,
permits, but
And what I would do is, I
For
was,
publishing the meeting and whatnot, would have to be a specific time. I would recommend 6:30 if we could do that, depending on 2, 3, or 4. And just see how it goes, just, play it by ear. We'll try at least April or April, May, and then as we get more specific, we may, I would probably recommend we split it. Probably what you said, meeting.
Attorney Caplan, is that?
April 13th would be fine, and we'll come in whatever time is convenient for the board.
Okay. We'll try to get the quick ones.
We're going to try to focus on it and get as much information we can about the general framework of traffic and maybe some conservation information probably be just fine.
I mean, for April 13th at 7:30.
7:30?
And, yes, and
Shoot for that.
And even if it starts a little later, at least clocking at 7:30, it wouldn't start any earlier, could start any earlier than that. And if the board still pleases to have it in here, since most of the 40B meetings are expected to be taped for the town, it might be better suited in this room.
Okay. So 7:30?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Motion to continue to,
Yeah,
Like a motion.
yes.
I'll make a motion that we continue the meeting till April 13th at 6:30. Right.
7:30.
7:30.
Oh, okay.
That was specific. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Thank
See
you
you
very
guys
much.
next month. You're welcome.